Welcome to Performance Days. I know that you are like super busy all the time, so this is an honor to have you on stage.
Oh, Kim, it's an absolute pleasure. And it says expert talks, but I think everyone in the room is expert. So I always enjoy the conversation bit and the questions that you all have to get involved in that conversation. But I believe we have a couple of questions to
I tried to be prepared.
Yeah, and thank you for stepping in. Poor Charles, we miss him desperately, had this bad accident. So you've been doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And it's more to the teams that do the rest of the job. So we prepared some questions, which are, so we do a different bit before we start. Who are you? Who knows Cyndi? Okay. Good. So my first question is perfect. Who are you? And if I do other parts of moderations, or I love to do podcasts as well, so the first question is always, can you maybe share as far as you want to go, personality, private, whatever, to make sure that everybody who's here listening on a different level. So the people who know you, who know Warn Again, who know Circulate, who know, maybe you can just.
Yes, a nice overview.
It's a nice overview.
Okay, how about another question? How many of you in the room are really into or knowledgeable about chemical recycling? Little bit. Okay, so if nothing makes sense, just please raise your hand and say, what are you talking about?
I will try to do the same.
Yes, good. Okay, and definitely more of a conversation. Where do I start?
By the way, do you want to sit down?
I'm thinking it might be more natural.
Yeah, sorry.
Is that all right?
I forgot to prepare.
Gosh, it's always a long story, so I'm going to try and cut it down. But I think to go back a ways, back in 2005, I set up a company called Warn Again, and it was a very simple vision. The goal was to find a solution or solutions to end textile waste, with a caveat that we want to start replacing the use of virgin resources. So in the first couple of years, we were experimenting with upcycling, taking old textiles, creating new products, and then selling them on. But it wasn't long before we realized we weren't solving the problem of textile waste with upcycling. We were only postponing textiles from going to landfill. And so it was in 2011 actually, when I had somewhat of a chance introduction to a chemist. Someone in our network thought, you need to speak to this guy. And he's Dr. Adam Walker, who's now our Chief Scientific Officer at Warn Again. He is the brains behind the technology. We met, we said, okay, right, we're trying to recycle textiles. We want to find innovative ways of doing it, but scalable ways of doing this. And he is a scientist working in the space of dissolution chemistry. Dissolution chemistry is like taking a spoonful of sugar, putting it in water, stirring it up, and then letting all the water evaporate. You still have the sugar at the bottom. Well, we talked about the idea of recycling textiles at the molecular level. So could we do something similar with solvents and textiles and recapture the polyester and the cellulose from the cotton or the cellulose? I mean, those, and we focused on polyester and cotton because these are the two most common materials used. And I said I was going to do this shortly, but it's...
No, it doesn't need to be shortly, but what was before 2011, are you?
It was all the upcycling.
What's your educational base?
Oh, even before that. I came from a creative industry, filmmaking.
So this is such an important issue to understand. Where was the change moment and what happened to become like what you are now?
I was a filmmaker in music videos and commercials and doing production. I moved into direction. And in my early 20s, I
was a superstar?
I was really interested in looking, famous singer. Maybe you don't recognize me, no. But I was, started becoming interested in social and environmental issues. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to move my filmmaking in that direction. But that wasn't quite, back then it was quite hard to get things commissioned that had any meaning to it. And I had a kind of evolution where it became about finding a global problem and finding a solution for it. And for whatever reason, it became textiles. Well, there's a story behind that, but it's too long for today.
Yeah.
But it was just, searching for what is it that I want to dedicate my life to? And it was when I found out about the challenge of textile waste and the massive volumes of materials, new materials that are used every year to make textiles. I thought, this is crazy. Isn't there a way we could turn old textiles back into new textiles?
And you know what? I was asking for that question because all of us have the same moment and the same situation. We're going to have an education. We are going to work somehow in the combination of our personalities and what we do. And on a specific point, there's a switch moment, or there's a moment of being in the right peer group or whatever. And being a filmmaker also is a passionate job. So this is what you transfer to the industry, and this is why I wanted to outline. We all need somehow the passion what we are doing. So take out first passion.
And there's nothing more rewarding than spending your day-to-day life, focused on something you believe in passionately, something that's a big problem that has solutions out there that you want to be engaging in and making happen. And I think for something like textile waste and the replacement of virgin resources, it's all about circularity. That's what I get excited about, is system solutions. And because we're at the very, very beginning of circularity, it's like we need everyone involved in it. There's so much work ahead of us. Less than 1% of existing textiles get turned back into new textiles.
Yeah.
So we have 99% more to do. And the solutions that will enable this are all out there now at different stages of development. And they're kind of slowly, maybe quickly, starting to come together.
And then that would be the next question now. The journey from the beginning, you said 2011, then to Worn Again, then to Circulate. Can you give us an outline on the journey and then prepare for the question, what are your biggest needs to understand? That would be the third one then to involve everybody. But the first one would be journey 2011, Worn Again, Circulate.
Yeah, so once we were introduced to our scientists and we realized, yes, we carried out a proof of concept where we were able to prove through this kind of process at bench scale of using patented technology to turn old textiles back into raw materials. We just had a proof of concept at little beakers in the lab. And we thought, wow, we've done it. And so the first thing we did was we hopped on a plane to H&M in Stockholm. We said, look what we've got. Is this of interest to you? And they were like, yes, we would like to see this happen. We would like to see textile-to-textile recycling become a reality. So they became our first investor. And in fact, Worn Again was the first innovation that H&M invested in from their CoLab investment arm, which was really exciting. And we also went to Puma. One of our friends here, Bowie, who was there at the time, also got involved and said, we really want to be a part of this. We want to make it happen. And so it was so exciting to see that industry wanted this. We are 10 plus years on, 11 years on, and I think although we've had some challenges, we collectively as an industry, moving to textile recycling, I think so much has happened, and we are on the cusp of it. But going back to your question, have I explained should I give a quick overview of the process itself, how it works? So the Worn Again process, and we are one example of many different types of chemical recycling. But in a nutshell, we're able to take in pure polyester and polycotton blend textiles. They come into the process, we separate the polyester and the cotton. Polyester goes down one stream, it gets decontaminated, so all the dyes, the finishes, everything gets removed from the polyester, and the output is a PET pellet that has been brought back up to virgin equivalent molecular weight. So it's the same quality, same chemical structure as you would get from PET made from oil, which is massive. It's a massive shift in what's going to be possible in the future. Then on the cotton front, it goes through a number of similar steps, and the output is in the form of a cellulosic pulp, which can then go back into fiber spinning, like viscose, lyocell, that type of thing. So it's not a cotton replacement, but more of a cotton displacement. But the inputs are textiles. That's the key change. We no longer have to use virgin materials. Now, where we're at in the process, we always knew from the beginning it could be somewhere in the region of 10 years development time. So having partners like H&M and other industry strategic partners come on board to finance it was crucial, because no venture capitalist out there would be interested in investing in a company that has a 10-year runway before revenue. And that was the biggest nightmare, was the finance raising over the years. We're still not there. We are now, we had a successful finance raise about a year ago for the demonstration plant phase of the scale up. And that's happening in just outside Zurich, in a place called Winterthur. And that demonstration plant will be 1,000 tons per year, but it will act as the blueprint for scaling up. And so once we have that blueprint, it can be licensed to plant operators around the world. And we can see multiple plants replicating and really moving to textile. And that led to the next business, Circle 8. So Circle 8 is now focused on the UK market, and we've become the official licensee of Worn Again's technology in the UK, so that's my passion. None of this means anything until we have plants up, until we're actually churning, taking in materials and sending stuff out. And Circle 8 was really set up because, for many years with textile to textile recycling, all of us, there's a whole handful of technologies. The biggest questions we've all asked is, as soon as we build a plant, what's the most important thing? The feedstock. Where are we going to get the textiles from? They exist everywhere. You've got collectors who are collecting and sorting rewear, non-rewearables. They're everywhere, but a lot of them are still going to landfill. And a lot of them, once they are collected, get baled up and shipped off to faraway lands to be sorted. And so that in itself, that kind of business model of just sending end-of-use textiles elsewhere isn't going to work, because for the economics to work, we need those textiles to be collected, sorted, and prepared into feedstock for chemical recycling. And that's what Circle 8 is doing with the UK's first automated textile sorting and pre-processing facility, which will take in non-rewearable textiles, not the rewearables, that's for other markets, but the non-rewearable textiles will come into the facility as textiles. It'll go through processing steps like NIR detection to be able to put your cotton in one bucket, your polyester in another, polycotton, all the different buckets for different types of materials. It'll then get chopped up, all the buttons and zips get removed, and then it will be prepared into different types of feedstock specifications required by a Worn Again plant, by an infinited fiber, by all the other chemical and mechanical recyclers out there. Will be preparing the feedstock depending on what their specifications are. So it's it's a massive infrastructure shift that needs to happen. There's a lot of talk about these automated sorting facilities happening in Europe now.
We heard a lot in the last
rehab.
1.5 days.
Yeah. So it's that sort of thing that's starting to bubble up. But it's huge. I mean, it's infrastructure, it's new processes, it's diverting materials today that are going somewhere else into new. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that.
And trying to make this super huge holistic thing a little more on track for us now. In the prep conversations, it was not only on feedstock, it was also, we keep that away for a second, or for the speech now. we focus on this situation right now, which comes to, not sure who saw that in the newspapers last 2 weeks. It was on Renewcell and on Spinova and on the finance situation of all of that. Though that would be the next topic we discuss. But before, as promised, I would love to collect some questions and interests and what's in your minds. If you listen to this talk, you will be here for a reason. So I would love to understand what's the biggest questions are. We start over there. Pia is not there. So can you help me with the microphones maybe for a second? Thank you. So we start on the left, we continuously move to the right and hope to have like 5 to 10 most important points. Otherwise, we will do it ourselves.
Good.
Okay.
Perfect.
Hi. Really straightforward question, hopefully. What actually class...
Can I ask you can you please say your name and what you're...
I'm Becky. I'm a freelance designer.
Okay, thank you so much.
What do you class as a non-rewearable textile, like in terms of how you would define that to, what comes in? Yeah.
Should we go one by one here, Kim?
I would love to collect first. Is that okay?
Okay, you have to write them down because I'll forget.
I do, of course, all the time. Can you just hand over the microphone? Select who you like and what's on. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Graham, designer from Albion Cycling in London. You mentioned contaminants on a chemical level, sort of dyes and treatments that are removed, and then the physical zips, buttons that are removed. What about things like threads, like a nylon thread used for sewing, overlocking, things like that in there?
Good. You're a good contributor to all the sessions. Please say your name and your role.
Thank you. My name is João Matias from YKK, and I have actually 2 questions. One that is more interesting to my industry. First, what about the recycling of buttons and zips, like you said, because they are detrimmed? And the second question, which is a little bit uncomfortable and maybe blunt, sorry about that. How can you be sure that Worn Again or Circle 8 won't have the same fate as Renewcell?
Oh, hi again.
Hi, I'm David, and I'm a freelance sportswear designer. And a question I have is, hearing all of these fantastic talks and everyone talking about circularity and recycling textiles at different stages, I wonder if there are any plans of collaborating with other people who have different elements of this chain more figured out potentially. Like, for example, lensing and some of their closed-loop solvent solutions would sound very interesting, but then they've got short fiber problems with their recycled materials, or the AI sorting of fabrics to create more efficient processes. Are there any plans to basically collaborate?
Good one, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Perfect.
Are we fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would love to go to that point which more or less comes to the last one as the first, because then afterwards we go into the different sorting processes. And the first one, when we had our prep talks, were on cross-industry mergers, solutions, whatever synergies. So we will have another speech after this one on BASF from Frank. Are you here already, Frank? Hi. So, Eastman as well? Charles told me to ask for you and for Eastman. Is Eastman here?
I don't think she's speaking.
You don't think she's speaking?
She's here, but she's not speaking.
Okay. So for the situation right now, which you mentioned for Renewcell and for Spinova, can you give a short introduction on the status quo fact-based, and afterwards we hear your comment? So it's a two-parted question for everybody who has maybe not heard what happened.
Yes, okay. So for those of you who don't know, Renewcell are a company that is able to take in pure or cotton-rich end-of-use, non-rewearable textiles. We'll get to that definition. And produce a similar type cellulosic pulp that can go into fiber spinning. And, all of us have been sort of, some look at us as competitors, but we all talk about being collaborators because the problem is so huge that there is enough room for multiple textile-to-textile recyclers, especially when we look at the different fiber compositions and blends. And, seeing the news a couple weeks ago, we've known for a while that there were financial problems, all sorts of challenges for the company. They were the first one to actually build an industrial scale plant in Sweden, and they've gone into administration. I think it was announced maybe 2 weeks ago or something, which is an absolute disaster for all of us. We were, the industry's been devastated. Certainly my LinkedIn feed had nothing but support, and Martin's here, sorry to point you out. It was, a real massive blow to all of us because, they were at the forefront, getting up there, taking chances. And the challenge, I think in a nutshell, Martin will tell you the kind of very detailed reasons for why this has happened. But I think ultimately it's down to the fact that circularity is about systems. You asked about collaboration. There are so many moving parts and pieces that need to be joined up that aren't yet. So it's hard to make the economics work. It's hard to make the supply chains work. It's hard to raise the finance for because everyone's sitting around saying, well, we love this. When's it going to happen? But we don't want to invest. We'll wait until we've got price parity for the materials. Then we'll all get involved. There's a lot of sitting around and waiting. Oh, that's the negative side. There's also a lot of brand retailers who are getting active, putting money in, getting behind these developments, but we need more of that. And I think it was a real shock because everyone thought, oh, we're off to the races now. Renewcell are up and running. And what we need now is for everyone in the industry to say, nope, this is not a choice of whether we go to circularity or not. We have to do it. We don't have a choice. We need to make it work. And yes, there are going to be stumbling blocks along the way. There are going to be sourcing issues. There's going to be economic issues. But we have to recognize it's the long term we're going for. Just like with anything like solar panels or electric cars. It's a new industry that everyone has to get behind, not report negatively on. I've seen some negative reporting, which is like, will chemical
really
recycling work? That does not help. Come on.
Yeah.
We've got to get everyone behind it and say, what's my role? How can we make this happen? And I think there are a lot of designers here. You do have a very important role to start demanding it as a designer, as an individual, as a person on the planet saying, we can do this better. Because it solves so much. It solves the waste issue. It solves new materials or the resource issue. It's just a much more intelligent way of doing things, and making excuses for why we can't do it, I think, doesn't serve anyone.
And trying to focus on what happens now, have you seen this coming, and has this to do with the market crisis, or what's it?
I think there are a lot of, yes, external forces to do with war, the price of oil, the cost of living, interest rates. There's a lot of things. The brand retailers are, going through hard times right now, and innovation suffers. But like I say, I don't think this is a choice. We have to go forward with moving to circularity. The solutions are out there. We just need to bring them together, connect them up. And there are definitely some positive stories out there that are happening. There's more investments. There were a few kind of sad stories, but also you've got companies like Sire, the polyester recycling technology that has just been announced that raised, 600 million. Infinited Fiber has closed on another successful round. So, I think the investment community is there now. They've been snooping around, hearing about circularity, about chemical recycling, about automated sorting, and they're interested and they're looking at it. So we just need to kind of push them over the line and really make this investment happen at big scale. And government involvement is needed, legislation,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
And summing it up for that point where we discussed up front, one of the most important things for us to spread the word is the finance and the investment structures. And yesterday we had one of the speeches and conversations here, which was on how is footwear doing better. And we had David Eckelund from Icebug with us. And he, when everything comes together for concrete learnings, and he was saying he started with his bank 2 years ago on a different, he called it green structure. So he wanted to set up his structure behind with having a bank in behind which restructures because they want to be part of the bank. So they were like putting it on demands and on visionary financial constructions, which are not so visionary as it sounds now, but it's on a complete different behavior with old structures. And that was one point you were towards, Frank, towards a cross-industry mission. So that would be one point where I would love to highlight in the next minutes, something on your message to call to action to all of us, how to tackle that sector.
Yeah, well, and I also think the investment side, that there are green shoots now where, as we were talking about earlier, this is systems change. So you can't just take straightforward investment communities and trial one over here, one over there. It's about saying, okay, that technology is related to this one, related to this, and actually take more of a systemic approach to investment. I think that's starting to happen. There are a few examples of funds that are looking at this, so we need more of that. When it comes to collaboration, I've never seen more collaboration happening right now. You know, we've got groups like Accelerating Circularity who are fostering that collaboration. We have, you know, in the UK, we're part of a 21 stakeholder consortium, which was funded. We received a £4 million grant from the UK government to focus on developing automated sorting in preparation for mechanical and chemical recycling, which was visionary of them, because government don't often take risks, but they listened from industry that this kind of stepping stone of automated sorting is the absolute crucial step before you get to chemical recycling. You can't have one without the other. So as part of this collaboration, we have brands, retailers, the collectors and the sorters, industry organizations like UKFT and WRAP, all looking at what are the components that are needed, because no one company can do this on their own. We need everyone kind of coordinated in a roadmap to getting here. And I think the one shift that I've seen recently that gives me hope is we used to talk about circularity really broad, very macro, conceptually, but now it's starting to play out in pockets regionally. Like we're talking about building an automated sorting facility by next year. We're talking about when's the first plant going to be up and running, you know, for us, for others. And that's great. And we just need to push those pockets, because as soon as they start operating as part of that system, that's when you suddenly get that eureka moment. That's how the economics are going to work. And then everyone's going to be all over it. But we need those movers and shakers to be doing that now, and to collaborate more, and to get designers asking and saying to the companies they're working for, we need to move to circular materials. It's our only option.
And seeing this as something in between, this is a holistic visionary, you can like drop out sentences which are like, this is the whole one. But, and this is what I was asking you at the beginning, please take these messages between the lines. It's super concrete. You are working so concrete, and now we come to the other questions as a wrap-up. But how can we like learn and find all the ways through? Because regional scalabilities of opportunities of all the recyclers, sorters, etc. Is there a recommendation how to find the right?
I think there are lots of messages for the different audiences. So whatever area of the industry you're working in, get educated on what circularity means for you, because it is the right thing to do. It will be the economically viable option that everyone's asking for. So learn about it and become that internal champion. Or if you're an entrepreneur, keep fighting for it, because I truly see one day in the very near future where all of these solutions, they're suddenly going to join up in a way where we say, wow, what took us so long? Why didn't we think about this? Why didn't we get this moving quicker? So understand the role you play and make it happen quicker. Influence internally is kind of all I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And this is what I really adore in terms of platforms. Look for the right buddies. So, coming back to the questions, is that fine for now? What does non-recyclable mean?
NRT, non-rewearable textiles. And I think as part of our project...
I said recyclable, sorry.
It's okay. There's so many terminology. NRT, ATSP.
Oh.
So RAP are an organization in the UK that are working on across the textile industry there with brand retailers, collectors, sorters, and they're in the consortium that we put together. And they've brought together definitions for different terms, and I don't remember it off the top of my head. You can check RAP's website, but essentially non-rewearable textiles are, imagine, a textile bank. Everyone throws, whatever they want into it. It comes back to a sorting facility. If it's rewearable, if it can be reused either locally or in reuse markets around the globe, that's rewearables, RT. The non-rewearables are the textiles that you could call them non-rewearable, non-reusable. They could have holes, stains, they're damaged, they're torn, just anything that we can't find a market for. And you could argue that a lot of rewearables may get thrown into the non-rewearable pot because there aren't any markets for them. A lot of clothing is not so good quality, and we won't find those reuse markets. For me, it could be dead stock that can't be resold, damaged goods brought back to stores. So anything really, and it's not just apparel, it's any textiles. And maybe I can go to that next. Well, actually, we'll come to it in a minute.
No.
I was going to go to the nylon one.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
We do not have like 1, 2, 3.
Okay. But does
Is
that
that what-
answer it?
yeah.
It's just non-resaleable. And there are a lot. In the UK, we've got somewhere around 700,000 tons of non-rewearable textiles. About half of those are still going to landfill, and the other half are being collected, baled up with the rewearable textiles, and exported to be sold or to be dumped elsewhere. So we're exporting the very resource that we could be turning into a global commodity or a material. Huge opportunity. It's not just about waste, it's about economic growth if we can recapture the value from those materials. Graham, I was going to answer your question around nylon thread and everything. And for most chemical recyclers, we require the pre-processing to happen before it goes in to our chemical process. And that's where an ATSP fits in. Chop it up, get rid of buttons, zips, remove those. What then goes into a chemical recycling process, so say we want pure poly and polycotton blends, it's gone through an ATSP, we get our 8mm swatches.
Dear visitors, we kindly invite you to join the expert talks for fun writing session on You Are Meat, the new circular polymer feed for the textile industry, entirely made of textile waste. At 12:30.
Are you prepared? Good. So we have 2 minutes to go.
Yep, ATSP, it chops up all the materials, gets it into the feedstock specification for Warren again. We are able to take up to 5 to 10% other materials. And that means it could have nylon thread, it could be blended with, it could have lycra, spandex, that sort of thing. because when it goes into the process itself will selectively identify the polyester and clear everything else away. It sort of purifies the polyester. So if there's nylon or wool or elastane in there, it gets separated out, filtered, and it comes out as waste. So for any chemical recycler, the target is to have as much polyester and or cotton, whatever your process is recycling, as much of that as possible and as little of the other as possible, because it comes out as waste. Now, eventually, I would say in chemical recycling 2.0, as we're launching these processes, the next question is, well, what do we do with all the buttons, the zips, everything that's been cut out that we can't use during the pre-processing phase? We need innovators saying, okay, how do we separate these? How do we get these into recycling processes? It's not been our focus because we're focused on the core goal of getting the raw materials back. But ultimately, I don't know if Resort Tex is here, but it's a technology that the thread is, you can dissolve it. Sew your clothes up, dissolve the thread, then you could even get rid of all the zips and everything else if it's got zips with that thread where you have as little or minimal yield loss as possible. So it's like, again, the solutions are out there. It's just bringing them all together. And it's up to you guys here. I mean, they're all out here. Just start introducing them one by one within the company. Show what's possible. And eventually we're going to get there.
And the ball is then maybe between all of us, looking at the most important ones for what's happening when it's over. So maybe you could do something in autumn for YKK announcing which kind of innovations and for the solution driving you have, because it's so inspiring how far you go. But if this is the question, we need innovators. And I have you Resort Tex? Have you heard of them before? So update in autumn. There was one question on contamination. Was that answered as well?
I think so. I think the contamination was the nylon thread.
Okay. So then we have answered all the questions, I guess. Pia is there for the open microphone. Is there if there's one or two questions? We could still cover it before. Frank, you can kindly invite you to come a little closer already for your next slot. Please say your name, the role, and the question you have.
Okay, I'm John Mowbray, the editor of Ecotextile.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Welcome.
Hi, editor of Ecotextile News. Cyndi, I just wondered whether you could tell us a bit more about the licensing sort of business model, because from my understanding and what we've reported is that the business model was a big contributor to what happened to RenewCell. So, I've got a theory that innovators need to stay as small as possible for as long as possible, rather than scaling up too quickly. So how does Circle 8 fit into that in terms of licensing, rather than building a huge plant and spending hundreds of millions of dollars to do that?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And I would say from a Warn Again perspective, in terms of the technology development, we're in year 11, and the goal with the technology development is to get it to the point where it is licensable. It is ready to scale and will be efficient. Now, of course, any new manufacturing process, any new chemical process is going to have teething pains, but we're trying to rule out as many as possible during the development phase. So when we get that first plant up and running, yes, there's going to be kinks, but we've developed it to a point where it's, nearly, it's optimizable, if that's a word. I think licensing, the idea behind the licensing model, and it may be that that's a phase 2. We have to focus on getting the first plant up and running. Circle 8, being the licensee, will work very closely with Warn Again on that first plant. If we're the guinea pig, it's going to take a while to get through all of those teething pains. But the idea is once you've got that, once you've proven it, the idea for licensing is that once that risk has been taken out, you can then replicate very quickly. And that's what we need on this. But I kind of jump ahead of things and think, the big picture too soon. But you're absolutely right. We need to get the technology completely to a point where it's faultless. But it's such early days for that. But it's a really important thing. But we're the young innovators, but we've also got the big companies like Eastman, BASF. They're all working on new processes. So I think more collaboration there, more teaming up, making sure we have the right expertise in that first plant.
And ask the right questions.
Yes. And yeah,
Always
it's all
at the
about
beginning.
team, it's expertise, and making sure we don't scale too quickly. We do it right. So for instance, we might start at 30,000 tons and then scale to 50, depending on the chemical engineering and how it works. But there's so many things that have to work. We need the brands and retailers to be behind this, because that was the kind of downside for RenewCell, because they went out, they thought they had commitments from brands and retailers. Then it came down to it because it's their supply chains, the brand retailer supply chains, that need to buy the raw materials to then make the products. And there just wasn't enough connection happening there to de-risk it. And that's such an important role for the big brands, is to de-risk, to prove the demand is out there. I mean, the demand is there. We're using over 110 million tons of different types of raw materials to make our textiles every year. 80% of that is polyester and cotton. The demand is there. These aren't new materials. These are what we're already using, but just made from end-of-use textiles. It's a win-win.
So, in respect of the timelines, I'm so sorry to finish this one. Thanks, and wonderful to have you here. Are you around for a second for personal conversations? For sure. So you will meet Cyndi over here. Thanks so much.
Great.
Amazing.